There we go. All right. Kick off this June meeting of the GLC Council with exercise and devotion from Pastor Brett.
All right, it's my turn. And I was gonna make a graphic, but I didn't. I wanted to talk about today. There's this like symbol or like kind of concept of what it means to be a pastor that I think also applies to what it means to be a Christian. And so I want to tell you about it and invite you to think about how you fall into these different roles and which ones of them you find more challenging. I've shared in my pastor's report, which we'll go over later, some things about my work and delegating and my time that I also invite your just kind of longer term discernment and feedback about, which could dovetail with this concept of what the pastoral role is. So it's 3 P's in this model. It's pastor, prophet, and priest. Those are very pastory words, but like I said, I want to invite you to think of you as Christians living the baptized life as doing these things, because as I thought about it, I thought you guys also do this as well. So first, pastor in this model involves things like caring for people, providing pastoral care, support, walking with people through milestones of life, and trying to connect people with community like a shepherd. So you may not be paid to do this or do this, but you really do care for each other, and I appreciate that. It matters that we do this. And I know that some of you do this in different ways in your work and in your life and in your family life. So pastor, the second one is prophet. And prophet is a challenging one because it's the concept, and in the ELCA constitution and parts of our own congregational constitution, which we have to adopt from the ELCA model constitution, has parts in it that speak about this prophetic role, that the pastor is actually constitutionally charged to speak on behalf of the oppressed and poor and work for justice. This is also part of our baptismal call, that we are to strive for justice and peace in all the earth, is the last of the baptismal promises. That's a big one. And honestly, like as we think about these 3, we each as individuals and for each congregation, they probably have expectations or projections of the pastor to have different percentages of their time be allotted to these 3 roles: pastor, prophet, priest. The prophet would challenge the status quo, call out for needs and justice where it is needed. Prophets aren't very popular in the Bible. They often aren't in life. The third one is priest, which is not something we talk about a lot in the Lutheran Church, but we do in the Lutheran Church have this concept of the priesthood of all believers. But for me as a pastor, the priest role within this model means to care for the sacraments, worship, to preach, and all of these kind of to care for the wider church and a part of the institution as well. And you might not think of yourself as a part of the institution, but you are. Like I riffed on in worship, we are the church kind of thing. So the priest role, showing up for worship, doing all of these things. So you in your Christian life, you may see it as a different set of percentages for those things, but that's what I wanted to offer as the devotion, as something for you to reflect on now and for the time to come. Pastor, prophet, priest, for me and for you. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And hopefully Mark's make it in. I made sure to update the calendar invite too. So
Okay. Yeah,
we do have majority though for voting. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. We'll move into the approval for the May meeting minutes. Hopefully folks have had a chance to review. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? All right, seeing none. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? So move, second. All right, all those in favor, hands up, with Taylor abstaining. All right, great. Minutes have been approved. Moving on down, I don't think, and here we have any petitions or communications to make note of, unless Pastor.
No, I don't know of.
Okay.
Particular.
All right. Then we'll move into your report then, Pastor.
Okay, let me pull it up.
There's more.
And Mark's here now.
Taylor, we're all intrigued. Where are you? What's behind you? And you're muted.
Yeah,
Or you're saying.
you might need to rework your windows.
We're just curious. It's not essential.
You at least can hear us, it seems like.
It looks really nice.
Okay.
Looks like she's on a spaceship. Anyway, all right, pastor's
Yeah.
report. Let's go with this. So in my pastor's report, I usually break out like more task or event-based recaps, but here I have some larger kind of big picture things. I'm talking about here that I'm working to step back from at least one external commitment. I'm on 2 boards and a synod committee. When I committed to these, they were supposed to only meet quarterly, all 3 of them, and now they all meet monthly and have been in like major transition, which has taken more time. And then I want you guys to know about what Crystal and I have worked out, as I mentioned in worship last week. I think we have a great opportunity, and I hope that it's mutually beneficial that Crystal is with us. She's a 3rd-year seminarian. She doesn't have a field assignment, but she could really use some more structure and supportive, like feedback and place to experiment and to work on things in the church setting. And so she and I have worked on this plan that I've outlined here, that she will preach monthly and receive intentional feedback from me in a supervisory or collegial capacity, as well as sometimes she might ask feedback from you, the congregation. She's going to lead a season of Bible study on her own this summer. I might attend, but it's a good setting for like walking into leading these things. And then the 3rd one is we will work more on other places that she could lead, and particularly looking for places where she wants to grow in her ministry and work in the church. And I think this is a great opportunity, but I want to be transparent about that and to hear your input or feedback. And then just an FYI about the bulletin format changing and the 8:30 service. So it's mostly stayed the same though thus far. So yeah. But I want to split this up and ask if you have any comments or feedback on these matters, or on any kind of like task or specifics or other general matters before I talk about what I list below about having logged my time and reflections on that. Anybody have any thoughts, comments, feedback in general, or about these things I mentioned?
Yeah, I thought about it a little bit. Just curious, I don't know if you said you want to take a step back from one of those 3 organizational groups. Do you know which one you're leaning towards?
The GMC board.
Okay, sorry if you already said that.
There are other clergy that can take my role there.
And is there something that I know council might be kind of stretched thin, and I personally can't commit to things right now, but is that something council can step up and help with?
Isn't John Henry also a representative?
Yeah, John Henry is on that board as our GLC seat. So we are represented there. And I think by my stepping back, he can take on more too of a communicative role with council, filling us in about anything with GMC. So I've talked to him about that. But I appreciate that, Joel. Otherwise, I don't know. It's something that I need to make that transition happen. Yeah.
Okay. The other thought I had was with Crystal. I think it's a great idea. I guess my only thing would be, if she's looking for feedback from the congregation, what's the right format for that, so that we can be positive and constructive at the same time?
She has a little a little thing from the seminary, and she might be listening because Brittany's there.
Yeah, I'm gonna let her speak here because she's right here.
She has a thing from the seminary for feedback, right, Crystal?
Yeah, I have a field site form that they gave out for us to use when I did my field site, my first
Oh, did we lose?
Yeah, sounds like it.
think we lost you all for a moment there. But I think we got the essential piece. I don't know.
There's
Yeah.
a form.
There's a form.
There's a way to do it. Great.
Yeah. And we may particularly use that like, on 1 or 2 Sundays. Yeah. Upcoming. Other comments before we talk about the other piece of my report? All right. Let's talk about what I have listed here as part of the bigger picture piece, which is at the last meeting, we were talking about my time and being stretched and how I could delegate things, but I asked if it would be helpful if I logged my time. You said yes, and so I did. And for the last 3 weeks, it is a little bit skewed because Stacy has been out, but I don't think, if I'm really honest with myself, and based on what the commitments were the last 3 weeks, I don't think I would have worked less hours the last 3 weeks. It would have just been allocated differently. Because I did put in more kind of admin hours because Stacy had worked ahead and like worked on the bulletin and things, but I had to finish them and like finish pieces and then upload things and do all the things. So yeah. So I've worked just almost 60 hours a week the last 3 weeks in a row, and it is a lot. I think on average I do work between 50 and 70 hours a week, and that it does ebb and flow some, but as you can see there, there is a fair amount of time on member meetings and pastoral care. I broke it out into categories, which you can view. You may have questions about those categories or have things that you notice, and I welcome your questions on it. Yeah, I'm a little surprised, like I said, how many hours it adds up to, but it really does. And let me just look at my notes here. Yeah, I think in the weeks where like I don't have something of one category, then I'm able to take time and circle back with prospective members or do like more proactive pastoral care outreach rather than a responsive or reactive to needs. So I had some questions for you to consider, just to think about, I think one of the ones one of you had asked before in a previous conversation about this is what could I actually delegate? And that is a hard thing. I know colleagues who have some creative solutions. Like I know really only 1 or 2 colleagues who their administrator works like Monday through Thursday and Sunday mornings. And like, or I know congregations that have a Sunday sexton who is just like 5 hours a week, but they set up things for Sunday and that kind of thing. I think overall, a lot of congregations are, and just organizations in general, this is a growing pain. It's a positive thing, but it's also something where a lot of congregations in general are challenged for volunteers right now, or are people committing on that and having to shift models, because things that in our parents' or grandparents' churches would have been, in our parents' and grandparents' churches, there might have been a crew of ladies who came in and did XYZ, right, during the week. That doesn't exist anymore. So, and a lot of churches are moving to professionalize or parcel out different responsibilities so that they can, just get the bases covered. But yeah, so just welcome your brief. I know we have a full agenda here, but any feedback, things you want me to hear. Overall, I'm also trying to be transparent about this so that you can direct me about how there's some things that I feel like there aren't a lot of choices about, but as much as I can direct my time, what are our priorities here? So
I do have a question.
Yeah.
A few years ago, I did a similar exercise where I logged all my time
yeah,
into about 15-minute increments for about 2 weeks. And I was also very surprised at what I was spending time doing. This is at work, and what I wasn't doing. And what I did after that exercise was create a schedule of what my time should look like.
mm-hmm.
And I sort of slowly, over a few months,
Yeah,
got
Move
myself into what my time should be like. Is that
Yeah.
a possibility for you, or is
Yeah.
there, when you looked at what you were spending time on,
Hmm.
because when I did that, I realized I'm doing a lot of stupid things that are
Mhm.
not part of my actual responsibilities, but are helpful.
Yeah, right.
And so I kind of dump those things
Mhm.
and move things around. Is there flexibility when you looked at what you were spending time on, the reality? Is there flexibility in there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think yes and no. I think to do so, to make space or be intentional in that way, to reorganize, you would need to figure out what you can delegate or pull out. And the pieces that I could delegate or and want to do less of are admin, having to do double follow-up or fill volunteer roles, or like kind of like herd and prod kind of things. And then the third one is like just like setting up the this, doing the that, like making the coffee on Sunday morning, breaking down this, those kind of. But overall, it's hard in some ways to think of having a really structured work week because they're so wildly different. And like one week, I might, like one of those weeks, I had 2 breakfasts with church members, then like 3 different people who had personal crises developing that can't really be scheduled. And then like, it's a weird job.
Interesting.
It's
Yeah.
a weird job. So, and there's some like that I might be having dinner with someone, a church member, because there's a relationship there and there's a need there. And it's like, the job is like social, but also I'm always your pastor and I'm trying to balance my time. There are a few people that I've said no to lunch and dinner invitations to recently because I have done so recently. And I've said, like, I love you. I know I got to see you recently. Let's do that again in another few months. I just need to keep making my way around the congregation, kind of thing. So does that make sense?
Mark.
I have a
Go ahead.
question. Or are there overarching goals that you have for this exercise? Like, is there something that you want to, like, instead of like structuring it out, like overall I want to dedicate like this percentage of my time to, or like more of my time to this?
No.
I guess that's my question.
No, I mean, I logged my time. I think it was a really helpful exercise, and I may continue to do it to track it for kind of accountability towards developing goals like that. But I did so more as a demonstration for you all and to continue this conversation. I think honestly, a goal is to not work 60 hours every week, or 70 hours, and so that, yeah, I think you all have been thoughtful and generous to me in ways to hope that like I don't burn out and that it's sustainable, the work. As this is a part of a longer conversation that I've identified that I think we're in this growth period where I think we need to be moving towards more staffing or some kind of model that delegates some things, so that we can grow more. Because I think one of the pieces that I noted that I don't get to some of these weeks would be more growth oriented or building new programs or getting to do other things. I'm excited about Crystal stepping in on this Bible study so that I can build something else and offer a different kind of thing, which might engage different people in learning about faith, right? So, yeah.
Mark, I think, had a question or comment.
A couple of points. The first is, as someone who tracked every 6 minutes of his professional life for 40 years, it's a useful exercise occasionally to kind of figure out what you're doing and all of that. I would not suggest that anyone expects you, Pastor, to do that on a regular basis. It's losing yourself in the details and forgetting where you're supposed to be, somewhere between the details and the clouds. Secondly, I think as a member of the council, and certainly I would defer to you and your opinions, but the 2 most important things I think we need for a minister are to focus on Sunday worship and to focus on being available for those spiritual and physical and emotional emergencies that come up unexpectedly for parishioners,
Right.
members of the congregation. That's, I think, where most of us would think I'm not going to speak for everyone, where I would think having your pastor there is important. I don't know, about 12 years ago, after Pastor Philip had left, he contacted me and asked me to write a letter of recommendation to the Atlanta area synod, whatever synod he was in, so that he could be a guest minister. And I don't remember much about that letter. And I suppose if I dug, I could find it. But it basically was to the extent that as a small, struggling congregation, the pastor is everything from chief administrative officer to chief gardener. I mean, they you're kind of doing everything. We've grown. You're right. We need staffing. I don't know whether it's to the level of assistant minister, because I don't know exactly what that entails in the ELCA or the synod, but we need a backup who's got maybe 20 hours a week, who's doing not what Stacy does, and goodness knows she's very good at what she does, but not her role and not your role, but like somewhere in between. So just my thoughts.
Yeah, I think if we had like 20 hours a week of someone who, for instance, could do some pastoral duties, perhaps do campus ministry, do some other stuff that I could kind of parcel out, I could really continue to we have so much opportunity here. And I think trying to be honest that I think this, one of the stop gaps holding us back from that is my time right now. So it's been a
But
helpful exercise.
if we decided that that's where we wanted to go and that we could find the money to do that, what would that person be? I mean, what does it take to be an assistant minister?
Well, it doesn't guarantee that that person exists. Because I've already said to the bishop, like a year ago, I had said I wasn't making any commitment for GLC, but I was like, look, I just see so much opportunity here. If you ever came across someone who could be part-time, very part-time, and do some of these kind of things, we could be poised for that kind of but that is few and far between, and the ALCA is seeing a real decrease in the number of pastors. So to call a pastor is a big commitment. You can work with people on a contract basis, those kind of things. I'm not making any specific staff proposal right now. I'm just kind of inviting our longer term discernment about how we strategize about these things.
But I mean, I guess my base question is, if we decided that, and if it were available, does an individual like that have to be ordained, or can it be a seminary student, or what?
It could be a seminarian, it could be lots of things, yeah. And I've started talking to some other colleagues who have been in similar situations. One of my close friends, Jason in Chicago, is in a similar place where in terms of congregation size and growth and context. And they've added, now they have a seminary intern plus a senior seminarian, plus they've changed how they do their administrative staffing to provide a little more flexible support. So trying to talk to some colleagues about different models for that.
So I guess I'm kind of curious about a few things. One, I really like the tracking. I think it's something that maybe I should do too. And as a federal employee, Mark, I am supposed to track every 6 minutes, and I do my best. So I like it, and I'd be really curious, not to give you extra burden, but I'd be curious to see if it's like, if you have a year's worth of tracking, right? As you get a bigger sample size, like, can you see those fluctuations in the church year? But it may be more hassle than it's truly worth. What I see from here, what I think I'm taking from your report, is there may be places where, okay, if there's another staff person, that's one thing, but maybe there's places where the council can be doing some work too. And I know I'm the wrong person to say this right now, but like you were talking about making coffee or setting up for Sunday school. I mean, those things seem like things church members and council people can do. And the other question I have is, I don't know what the financial status is. Do we have to pay somebody for 20 hours a week, and can we afford that?
No, I mean, it would need a budget restructuring, right? But yeah. I think delegating some more volunteer roles and different things like that is something that is a goal of mine. But it does take some engagement. I'm thinking about what's the best way to do that in a way that will be sustainable. Because we can make sign up sheets and like ask people till the cows come home, but I'm thinking we need to like have a different model or have people kind of captain some of those areas so that also then I or Stacy are not the ones constantly having to check that and circle back. So, but I appreciate that is the direction. That is a helpful direction. And
I'm
go
so
ahead.
I think to just like keep this moving because we aren't looking
Yeah,
to do a full
we aren't looking
resolution
to
here
solve
on
it
anything.
today, so yeah.
But I do think some of your, even if you do high level tracking and make note reflective, whether weekly or whatever, on some tasks that they might not always be repetitive, like the coffee one,
Right.
that could be, and then we can have that to understand, to your point of like, how do we reorganize? Because yes, we do sign up sheets for everything. We technically have for fellowship on Sunday, and we're lucky once a month that somebody signs up for fellowship right now.
Right.
So it just, I mean, I regret today I didn't make my brownies.
It's okay. Yeah.
Like those things, and that, you know, we could figure out a better way to do it so it's not as one-off independent, and then you still have to have oversight to make sure it happens. How do you put that in place? So I think it's some of this, yes, continue reflection so that we can figure out how do we build out a better system for efficiencies in the future.
Right.
And then continue the conversation for two, what is needed to be put in place then for building something that gets us into a whole nother level as we transition as a congregation, continue transition. So I appreciate you being very open and honest and having this continuing as a continuing conversation.
I will. Thanks, y'all. Yeah. Let's keep moving.
Yep.
And I welcome like further comments one-on-one offline. Yeah.
Any other comments or questions regarding, oh, no, the pastor's report? If not, is there a motion to approve the report? So move second. All those in favor, hands up. All right, motion passes. Pastor abstaining. Okie dokes. Moving into financial secretary's report.
Hopefully everybody can see the financial secretary's report. It should be in the folder in the usual spot. Nothing tremendous to report on the usual categories today. I have not seen a check under the new rent payment from the drama school in a little while. They paid utilities at the beginning of last month, but I haven't seen their new rent payment in a little while. So there might be some miscommunication there or something.
We'll talk.
Okay. So at the moment, they, in my record keeping, they owe us March, April, and May for this year.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a fair amount. Otherwise, things are pretty stable. We're probably slowly moving into the kind of springtime, summertime drop off in giving and attendance that we always see. The one issue that I did want to raise that is very easy, we have a member who wants to give a donation in stock. The easiest way for us to receive that is to open up an account at the same brokerage where that member has their accounts. And that will enable the transfer from that member's account to our account, and then we can cash out immediately. And having it all at one brokerage means that the whole thing can be seamless, very fast. So I just wanted to notify the council. I don't know if we need to take a vote. We may procedurally what we need to do, but I wanted to notify the council of that. I can probably take care of that, you know, probably a week just to get the paperwork done, and then we can receive the donation. And the best practice is to cash it out instantly so that we don't have tax liabilities. So I'll pass that over to the council. If need be, I can make a motion that we open up a brokerage account at, cannot remember the name of the brokerage right now, but I'll email everybody once I get that figured out.
Mark, you have a question?
Well, Brittany and I were delegates last weekend to the Synod Assembly, and we attended one of the lectures by, oh, help me, Brittany. It was the ELCA something. It wasn't
the foundation.
Yeah, the foundation. He was like a financial person.
And we asked about this, and don't we have to, before we even open up an account somewhere, don't we have to have oh dear, and I don't have any of my notes in front of me. Don't we have to have some kind of a policy that has been adopted?
We don't have to have one, but it is it is a helpful thing to have as a part of a larger gift policy. And as Eric mentioned, it's best practice and it's appropriate for churches not to hold those kind of stocks and things. So the ELCA Foundation, I found the example that he referenced in your talk, and I think we would integrate that as a part of our upcoming discussion about overhauling our policies and continuing resolutions. We don't have to have that in place to receive this gift. If it gets transferred, we are not holding that gift. And there's nothing that says that congregations or churches can't hold stock. They can, but it's a best practice to not be in that place of like holding individual stocks or playing the market. So we don't have to have a policy. We will get one. It would be then received like a regular gift. It just comes in as stock.
The other problem with opening an account at the brokerage or whatever whatever platform that the giver has is that it means we're probably, if we're lucky enough, we're going to be opening up a number of different accounts to receive a number of different gifts. And most accounts charge if your account goes to zero. So if we open an account, receive stocks and equities, receive them, cash them out, and then we've got a balance of zero, we'd have to make sure we're not on the hook for some kind of service fees on a monthly basis moving forward.
Yeah, I'll talk to the agent about that. That's on my list. What is the process for opening? It probably takes, usually in my experience, it's taken like a wedding signature or a fax and a phone call, and then talk about costs. So I'll go over that with the agent when I get a hold of them.
And Eric and I were just mentioning this briefly before the meeting started, but the signatories, and we didn't get into this detail, but the part of what keeps church finances, which are largely volunteer based, safe is that we have a different person who is the signatory on bank accounts from the person who reports on. So treasurer and financial secretary's duties are separate. So our treasurer is the signatory on our accounts. The financial secretary oversees income. So we would have to, maybe we would have both of you, but we would probably have to involve the treasurer side for that as well, for a good order, But I think we have a motion on the table here. I'll second the motion. We just frankly need to get the ball rolling on receiving this gift. We're not trying to push on process here because I think we do want to have the right policies in place. And I think those questions, Mark, that you identified, I'm not trying to be dismissive of them. We need to make sure we've enumerated them and get the answers. But yeah, what do y'all think? I'm in favor of doing it so we can get this gift.
So perhaps our motion should include opening up a brokerage account to receive this individual gift and ensure that we put in place best practices in our new
policies. That would be a policy.
Continuing resolutions.
Well, we'll get to that.
We'll get there.
But
Can we put a timeline on it, to develop it within 6 months?
Develop the policy in 6 months?
But if the policy isn't absolutely necessary up front, I think the trigger event here is getting an account set up so we can receive it.
Right.
So well, Eric, assuming you go through your initial conversation, I support that doing that.
Yeah, and I'll keep the council in the loop as I have conversations with this agent.
Okay, thanks.
so Taylor, can you read back where we are so far with what the motion is shaping up to be. I'm trying to work it.
Yeah, you guys can hear me, right?
Yep, we can.
Okay, cool, because I've been trying to talk for like a bit and no one,
Oh, man.
I think there was
Okay.
an issue on my end. Yeah, so the motion I have on my end reads, motion to open a brokerage account to accept the gift of stock and develop within X amount of time a formal policy, regarding, I don't know, stock, gifts of stock.
I would say gifts of stock, right? Anything else we have to expand it to? Okay.
I would say equities, just generally.
Yeah,
That
stock
includes-
equity.
Here we go. Better term. And I would say before end of year, because that would go in alignment with updating our continuing resolutions. So, okay, motion is on the floor. I think Pastor had already moved to second it. Any other discussion? All right, if none, all those in favor, hands up, aye. All right, motion passes, thank you. And okay, we still have open on the floor, the financial secretary's report. Any other questions or comments around the report? All right, is there a motion to accept the report? So move, second, all those in favor? Hands up, all right, excellent, thank you, motion passes. Treasurer's report, Christine did send out, she has a write-up. I see some folks are in there, just on a number of activities that she is going through. Poor thing, I think she's on the phone a lot when it comes to unnecessary paperwork in the world of taxes and then, around some audit stuff. So hopefully you've had a chance to read her report. Are there any questions? There is no activity or anything she needs for us to necessarily discuss at this time, but I do want to open the floor for any discussion around the report. And hopefully you also took a time to read or check out the budget versus actuals. Always good to keep an eye on that, especially where we are in the year now. We're starting to see where trends are. I didn't have any major flags. She did reference that and how we can utilize that better for future in different parts of the budget. Okay, is there a motion to accept the treasurer's report? So move second. All right, all those in favor? It's up. All right, motion passes. Moving into team and committee reports, I think the only one we need for this section to review is the property and capital committee report. Mark, if you just want to quick walk us through that.
Nothing really requires any kind of council action. I suppose the big thing with regard to the construction is that we're waiting now for the historical board to come back with approval for the window well topping and the contractor to get the rails, the wrought iron handrails to both sets of steps. I did talk briefly as I was leaving the early service this morning to Pat Henry. She knows someone from the neighborhood. I guess they walked by. This woman walked by when Pat was doing some yard work a year or so ago. Turns out the woman is a professional landscape architect, goes to St. John's, said, gosh, if there's anything I can ever do to help you, let me know. So this woman was coming by this afternoon at noon. So maybe Eric and Pastor, you depending on how long this goes, maybe you'll see Pat and this woman before you leave. In any event, she's just going to sort of walk through. Pat's got her list of native plants that we already have and just give her professional opinion or suggestions, not costing us anything. She's a Georgetown neighbor. That's all I've got.
Any other questions? Comments related to the report? All right. Moving on into old business. Brittany, I know you might still be on the road or transitioning, but I was going to ask if you could give us a brief readout of the Synod Assembly. If you can't.
Yeah. Can you hear me? You hear me?
Yeah.
Hello? Okay, great. Got me in the elevator. Okay, so we are home. Yeah. So on Saturday, June 1st, Pastor Brett, Mark, Chris Widener, Crystal, my wife, and I were the we were attendees at Lord of Life Lutheran Church in Fairfax. The theme for this year's assembly was empowered by the Holy Spirit. And it was a long day, but I thought it was pretty fruitful. There were some plenary sessions and breakout sessions. As Mark alluded to, he and I attended one on like basically financial health and being good stewards. I can't speak to the other sessions. It was a lot to take in as a first-time attendee. The keynote speaker was a professor of education from Towson University, and she was wonderful, as well as the Episcopal bishop of the District of Columbia was there, and she preached, and she did a phenomenal job as well. It was just nice to see a lot of new faces and familiar faces and just be in fellowship. There were 442 attendees, I believe, which was a very large group compared to years past, is what they said. But it was just nice to be around so many other Lutherans. And please, if you guys have anything to add, please do.
Brittany and I spent some time at lunch with Pastor Brian, who seems to be doing well and sends his best wishes to everyone.
Yes, it was good to see him. He's out in Fairfax, I think, or King of Kings is the church.
And as I understand, thank you, Brittany. There were no like major decision points or anything made at this assembly.
No, I mean, there was a lot of, so one suggestion I have for the future because they asked for feedback, was to maybe do like the resolutions that they talk about. It was at the very end of the day, and it's a long day. I mean, we were there from between 8 and 9 o'clock until they were still going strong at like 6 o'clock in the evening. And it's just a long time to be paying attention and being on. But there was a talk about a resolution to put a statement out about the conflict in Gaza, and just like really highly emotional and divisive conversations. And so it went on for quite a while.
They only started that at 5:30 p.m. So
yeah. And
your suggestion that they move that earlier?
Yeah, like everyone is, kind of pumped in the morning, like everyone's excited to see one another. And then after lunch, like we're in these breakout sessions, but then like when we come back together, everyone's kind of like, okay, let's do worship and then go home. But there's definitely really real work to be done. And I think that should be moved earlier. And I've been waiting for some like dedicated time to do the feedback sheet. So I'm going to do that today and suggest that.
Yeah, definitely. Next year is a bishop's election in our synod. So it will be a longer synod assembly, but it will be very meaty and very important that we fill all of our seats, and those people will actually vote for the next bishop here. So that's next year.
It's 2 days, right?
I think so, yeah.
And it's at a Marriott, so it's not at a church on uncomfortable seats.
Right. Anyway, we should probably keep moving.
All right, thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to open that up, but always helpful to know, and I appreciate we had such a great delegation at the assembly. All right, so moving into an update on updating our continuing resolutions and more so in a plan form. I might first turn it over to Pastor and I'll probably jump in here too at times. I think you just sent a link.
I just put the link in the chat.
Yeah.
Okay, this link in the chat, we had hoped to like send this out ahead of time and streamline it a bit, but I still think you can get a sense of it. I don't think we're looking for an official motion here, but just kind of the green light to continue this work and to let you know where we're at. Mark and Cassandra and I went through this old document that's linked there in the first paragraph, which was 55 pages of it was kind of a history keeping of all the continuing resolutions and policies we had passed. It was a hodgepodge, and it was faithful that we kept that record, but we need to reorganize it. So the suggestion here is that we had thought we might go into this and just rework some things and update, but it really would be best served, I think, by an overhaul. And the suggested overhaul would be a process of reworking and updating these things and categorizing them over the next few months, and then putting out an outline, which would be available to anybody, and certainly on our Google Drive as well, but even on the web or whatever, that has 3 different categories that are clearly delineated: policies, descriptions, and then continuing resolutions. So policies being current policies around things like building use, financial, and personnel, then descriptions of different roles in the church, staff and volunteer descriptions, as well as committee descriptions. And then the third one would be continuing resolutions. The ELCA defines a continuing resolution as a motion and action that is passed by council or the congregation that has future ramifications and needs to be kept in front of the body. So because I should have pulled the actual wording, but do you guys get what I mean? That we need to keep in front of us. So I guess, I know you haven't had time to review this, but I'm asking if this makes sense and if we can get the kind of just general thumbs up to then start working on this. Stacy did a lot of good legwork on this for me in the weeds of going through the old document, and thanks to Mark and Cassandra that we are kind of a subcommittee on this. But we'd like to then delegate this out, because some of these need to be reviewed by the pertinent groups or people that they affect, and others need to be brought up. And then we would bring in future months, probably not next month, but a couple of months, like a draft of a batch of all of this for review. Cassandra, does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm hoping this is making sense. I think the learning and going through a lot of this is, and there was a lot of details in there that not were only outdated, but are unnecessary for functioning in the future. So it was like referencing very specific names rather than title or whatever. And then there's some of these things where we need to be a bit more defined, I think, in the policy space. That is not necessarily, it's very different than what a continuing resolution is. So that's where I'm hoping, at least taking a look at these first 2 pages of this document, gives you that breakdown of the 3 buckets, helps you understand why we're doing this. And it's for putting in place also an efficiency and ease of looking back and updating accordingly as for those different sections. So it was never planned going into this as a full overhaul in this. I thought, oh, we're just going to go in and redline a document, but it needs a little bit more love than that. So I'm hoping there's been a fair amount of discussion around this with multiple folks. Would really appreciate any feedback or questions you might have on this and the thinking around it. And if there is a blessing to continue to move forward, because it will take some significant time from different parties.
And first, Pastor and Cassandra are being overly generous by including me in the work, because while I'm a member of the working group, this has not been the focus of my attention. And like Cassandra said, when I first started digging into the documents, I assumed we were just editing and redlining. And when it became obvious that wasn't the case, I went down other rabbit holes for other issues. But looking at this 2-page outline, it makes sense from what I know.
Certainly, all I know is when I saw the continuing resolutions before our like annual summit meeting, it certainly seems like having some organization here would be very beneficial.
Any other initial gut reactions? Anyone concerned about us taking this, what we're kind of initially outlining as process for next steps? If there isn't any, we just want to keep you in the loop of this, so.
No concern. I do think I like what it said earlier about maintaining a record of the past continuing resolutions in case you want to go back and look at it. I think that's an important thing too, but that's all.
Not looking to erase anything from that past for the sake of reference and archiving, but.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. That's good. I'm gonna move on then. If there's no other questions or comments, just for sake of time. We talked last month about the MPD camera sharing program. I believe there was, as noted in minutes, that Pastor and Mark were gonna kind of talk about it a little bit more. And I just want to see where we are in consideration, probably covering a number of questions that were raised in that discussion from the May meeting.
I volunteered to do the legwork on that, and I again with the assembly and all of that got preoccupied. I'll continue to look into that. One of the big issues is whether a participation in the MPD the Metropolitan Police Department's program is what that requires us to do with our already existing cameras and the footage that they take. The good news is this program doesn't have an expiration date. We can take our time to do due diligence, and if we decide we want to participate, we can begin that process. So I'll take the information that we've gotten to date, contact someone at MPD. We've been working a little bit, although I think we hit a dead end with the BID's new security administrative officer who signed on. He did a little bit of legwork for us and came back with not much of anything, which I'm afraid is going to be the situation. My guess is that the Metropolitan Police Department doesn't have answers to very specific questions because they probably haven't thought them through. So we may have to go by the seat of our pants on this, but I haven't been able to pinpoint that yet. So I'll do that.
I'll address just two things we talked about last week. Sorry, Mark, didn't mean to cut you off. Or last month was, does it have a time, like, are we signing on forever? And the answer is no. It's, I forget, either 3 or 4 years of commitment. And the second one is they do not have live access to your camera system, and they would not have access to any of the cameras that we did not purchase through the program. So they do not get a login, they can't access it, they still have to request it. So for a nonprofit or any business or nonprofit, it's up to $750 rebate for cameras. And they don't get live access, they would still have to request.
But Pastor, the 4-year length of agreement doesn't prevent us from leaving. It just means we have to surrender the equipment that we've gotten through the program, right?
It means that we're committed to be in this relationship with MPD, that if they ask for it, then we would give it, and we can renew it after 4 years. But you're not committed forever.
But they couldn't force us to stay in if we're willing to surrender the benefits of the original deal.
Right. You can get out.
Since that discussion, any other questions or comments for consideration as we review this? All right. Taylor, you might need to put it in chat because it's a little.
Any better? No.
Oh, that's better.
Okay, cool. I know last month there was a question on some of the clergy confidentiality with respect to. Okay, I'll just put it in chat. It's fine.
About clergy confidentiality.
Say again?
It was raised last month in our discussion, just concerns about the confidentiality end of it, in particular for clergy, for folks coming in.
I'm not an expert on clergy confidentiality.
Yeah, I don't think that's aimed at you, Mark.
Oh.
So,
One other one, maybe I don't know if it's been answered. We talked about this had a lot of facets to it, right? We talked about the possibility. It sounds like existing cameras can't be grandfathered in, but I think we had talked about if we wanted them to be able to access internal cameras, was that something that they could do? Like we could allow them that access, more from a safety point of view. I get there's privacy concerns we need to talk about. But part of me thinks if there's a terrible, terrible scenario where there was like a crime happening in the church,
Right.
and they were to have access to it, that could be potentially very beneficial. So I don't know if we've answered that yet.
Yeah, we certainly have had incidents that have happened in the church or within view of our cameras where we have downloaded the clip and given it to MPD. And so we would still be able to do that. I think the distinction here that is important is that even this program does not allow them live access, and so it would still be a matter of coordinating with them and pulling a clip from our system and that kind of thing. But we have in the past with different investigations, particularly My Stalker, but occasionally other minor things where an incident report or something is involved, we have saved clips also just for our own liability sake, or when we've had damage or things like that.
So there's no option to do a live share with them.
No,
It's just not part of the program.
no. Yeah, we kind of thought before last month's discussion that there was a live share, but it's not.
If you all will, if you remember there's one entry in the property committee report where we had some minor vandalism on the side yard this past month. You know, had we had cameras outside focused on that, we might have been able to, we probably would have been able to pull feed to see whether this was just college kids having fun or whether there was some grander malicious effort there. And if we found that there was some grander malicious effort, we could have turned it over to the police to have them, you know, file a police report for vandalism, trespass.
All right. Thanks for that update. Just one quick thing, if there's anything we wanted to quick cover on people for the steeple.
No, not in particularly. As we discussed last month, we're working to form a team which will work on efforts about this, but also more broad efforts about giving, funding, and stewardship as a congregation. I look forward to that team getting going, and I'll keep you in the loop.
Might want to stay off because I think we have the summer shelter concept as the next step.
Okay, that's next up. I hope you've had a chance to look at this. Linked there. I was just talking to John Henry and told him we'd be talking about this. Both he and Bill are in favor, and they have, you know, captained this in the past. It is still quite hypothetical, and a number of other congregations have shared their availability and capacity to help in response to this, which really is a unique and acute need for shelter in our city. As with winter shelter in the past, if this got going, we would be thinking about a very similar model, which whenever guests are present, there would be a GMC staff member here and would oversee this. But I welcome your thoughts. Again, it is still hypothetical. Yeah. I'm gonna plug in my computer.
Does GMC have any intention of ever restarting up the winter shelter?
Possibly. And last winter we did talk about it, but at that point, we were also, GMC was in talks with the city about possibly opening a hypothermia shelter in Foggy Bottom, but that didn't pan out. So the landscape of providers and frankly, like more government funding is really like fluctuates in the city. And GMC, I asked this question of Kelly and Rebecca, the GMC directors, about are any of the other agencies in the city responding to this, or are they able to kind of chip away at this? A lot of them only work from government funding and therefore have their hands tied, whereas since GMC is still really community-based and has these congregational relationships, has more flexibility to respond to a specific need. I don't know that we would commit. One of the reasons why like this is a particular need and I don't think GMC staff is like considering proposing like, oh, we would do summer, we would do a few weeks of summer and then also do a winter, is because in DC there is a right to shelter in the winter and the city opens these hypothermia shelters. So there are more beds available in the winter, whereas right now there are no beds available in the city and haven't been for weeks.
Could you quickly talk about what the responsibilities are if we agree to shelter people? I'm assuming it's giving them a place to sleep and food, it looks like.
Yeah, quick recap. So when the model ran in the past as a winter thing, and it would probably be largely like copy paste into a summer model, it was at the congregations for 2 weeks each and then would rotate, switching on a Sunday. And the guests were here approximately from 6 or 7 p.m. until 7 a.m. And a GMC staff member was here overnight. Congregations provided dinner, or sometimes other groups would come in and help with the meals at a congregation. And then breakfast was like a grab and go kind of continental thing provided by GMC. So people, when we have hosted here in the past, we kind of had the dining area in the fellowship hall and people slept in the sanctuary, finding each their own corner, which honestly was a really powerful thing when I was called here, that GLC opened our sanctuary doors for that reason. GMC owns cots and moves those from place to place to set up the shelter. It would be about a 12 guest maximum, and congregations are not required to have a volunteer stay overnight or on premises at all times, but in the past we have had volunteers do that. John and Bill Schilling were ones that primarily took the lead on that and are willing to do so again.
Would there be an overlap between the universe of folks that are in the pop-up and would be in the shelter at night?
Yeah.
And I guess because both of them are GMC, they'd understand if there was stuff in the way, because they've been prickly in the past that we haven't been, I don't know, responsive enough of keeping the place clean when they show up in the morning.
We had a conversation with them after that one run-in you had with them, Mark, last month, and I kind of reset some boundaries and level set about that. And we are revisiting our MOU with them next week just to recapture with their staff about setup and cleanup. But no, I think they would be understanding. Also, GMC staff, as with winter shelter in the past, if we are able to do something like this, if it is something that there's capacity in the neighborhood, they're going to pick guests who already have a housing voucher or are pretty stable in general, and or like a lot of them tend to be people who are older or medically, like it's just not healthy for them to sleep outside. A lot of our pop-up regulars, there's a whole crew of older men who, are sleeping outside right now.
So to recap, it sounds like it's providing a space, potentially a volunteer to spend the night, which sounds like John and Bill might be willing to do.
Don,
not Bill.
not Bill.
Sorry, I think I said the wrong name.
And dinner. And dinner.
Dinner.
And dinner.
And
I
then
mean,
dinner, that would be circulated amongst volunteers. We'd have different folks sign up for that. Because then we do fellowship with alongside dinner. I think if we use the same model. And the spending the night has not been a requirement necessarily. It's something we have chosen as a congregation to do. I know it's on concept phase. Do you know when some harder decisions need to be made? I mean, we are in June.
I think
And
I'm looking for your feedback and taking your temperature. My initial conversations with John, Henry, and with Bill were that, frankly, that we feel like it's not easy. You know, yes, this would be a lift, but we have the space and there is the need, and it feels like the right thing to do. We need to, I'm waiting, I want to give input to GMC about our individual congregation idea. Because I'm the liaison of the clergy, I have been polling all the other congregations, and I'm giving that data to GMC, and then we may have like a all-call Zoom meeting to just see if we think we could pull off, you know, a few weeks of this. So we may try to make that, they may try to make that assessment here in the next week or so, just to see if we can have a strategizing call about it. Yeah, churches move slow. Yeah.
Right, right.
Pastor, is there a possibility of pairing with another church, maybe even not a church that's a GMC member, that if we provide the space, they provide the dinners or
Absolutely.
something like that?
Yep.
I think that's a really good idea. And I've got some folks in mind who have raised wanting to do service things with us in the past, and I know that's something we've seen elsewhere. My one thing is I am inclined to, yes, we participate. This is something that very much drives us as a church. My one thing is versus the winter shelter, just reality, and we know this in the size of our church. And as we talk about volunteers and times, I think 2 weeks would probably be what I would say the max. And bless John Henry if he's like raising a hand for 3, but we lean heavily on folks like him and Bill, and we have in the past on that. And we'd still need to lean heavily on some of those guys to help us.
Those cots are heavy.
So, so that's just my thing. And so the sooner we know, and I understand we're one of a number here, is that we can get that, then we can start building out those logistics and ensuring we've got good coverage.
I defer to Cassandra and everybody else's experience, but it does seem to me this is also an opportunity, right? I think when I first joined the church, community outreach events like this were something that was pretty meaningful and something I wanted to try to participate in. Could be a way to start bringing in some of the newer people we're seeing and see if they're willing to take a more active role.
So I think what you're getting is there's support. Let's just
Okay.
be mindful of what we are able to do.
Hear you on that. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I'll keep you in the loop as conversations go forward. And I would want to give you all further say to like if there is an official yes or no and that kind of stuff. So
Yep. Sounds good. Okay, looks like the next item on the agenda is a space use request.
space use request. There's this World Music Day, which is a French thing that I don't know they do in France every year on this date, and they're trying to do it in Georgetown for the first time this year. It's going to be an event at the French Embassy and all through Georgetown. They're going to have all these acts. I linked a little like who, what, when, where. So the request is from the bid from the business district to use an outside space. They don't need the church to be open, but they do want power. We don't have power at our new Bell Tower Plaza. I was like, hey, could you pay for power? They didn't respond about that. So I was like, hey, well, you can always use it. Like, let's, no, I don't, I've found that while like we want to be a good neighbor partner, I still think these are important and good relationships. their structure is not such that they're going to fund projects at churches, unfortunately. But anyway, they want to know if they can put like a jazz trio or those kind of instruments either by the red side door or on the Bell Tower Plaza from 5 to 8 on Friday the 21st. Yes or no? They will have signage, so it's clear that it's their event, not ours.
I mean, this is museums, it's not in words, sorry. Right? This is like jazzy,
Yeah,
not a vocalist.
yeah, I don't think so. Yeah.
I know
And
that's ask,
if
but
if we decide we want to do this, I'm around. I can be the GLC babysitter, so to speak.
If we decide, yeah,
we have that outlet by the GMC entrance. So
red side door has an outlet outside, so it wouldn't even necessarily need a babysitter unless we just want someone on site for good relationship.
Second.
But the bell tower door, the closest outlet is in the cabinet, and it's like a pretty old wiring with a surge protector that we run our sound system off of. So I don't know how much. Charles and I were talking about, like, it's not a high voltage or whatever.
I would actually recommend that they just bring a lot of cord and they run from the GMC.
Run from the other, yeah.
They need to
Versus messing with, going in there. So
Although if they've got instruments, I'm not sure why they need electricity at all anyway.
it's like maybe an amp or something or to.
Right, I like Cassandra's idea. I also think it seems like a good use of the space. Great way to show this beautiful new space and get people engaged.
Show it off.
So what about if we said, yes, I'm just spitballing this, so we have some wording. Yes, they could use the red side door space in the exterior outlet, or they could use the bell tower, but they would have to bring equipment and like extension cords to be able to run to the nearest outlet, which is not close. That's just an idea.
What hours did you say, Pastor?
5 to 8.
I would be supportive of that. I think that's a good idea. Other piece would be to also request that we, especially if they're in the new bell tower plazas, like it'd be great to have signage. Or I mean, we have our sign there, but like it may be nice to have an extra plug for folks who are listening to a wonderful jazz trio on a brand new space to sort of chip in if they want to or feel so called.
Yeah, we could make a QR code or sign or something like that.
You know, we could have a sign, we can do one of those types of signs that can be utilized for multiple events. So like this in the future. That's a good use of funds. Okay, so it sounds like there is a motion out there to accept the request for space use with the notation that they will be allowed to use power from the nearest outside plug. I don't think we have to put all the other details in there. Second on that motion? Second, all right, all those in favor? All right, motion passes. And you'll let them know? Okay. All right. Any other new business? A few things I just want to highlight for upcoming events is that we have Workday next Saturday. You know, some of us have been stressing it. It is going to be kid friendly. I'm bringing a 7-year-old who loves to help and loves to entertain, especially younger kids. So I'll continue to promote that. We have and they'll be in the morning hours.
Just morning.
Yeah. So Todd and I will be there. Sounds like Brittany, welcome others. I know Pastor will be out for Joseph and Eli's wedding. So some of the typical folks won't be there. Not a big deal because we are a church and we're a group. And maybe hopefully Joel will be a daddy by then. So we don't know. I'm so excited for that though. Then we have the Juneteenth event, so that is a Wednesday. I'm unfortunately flying out to give a speech somewhere, but I'll be sending family representatives to that. So hopefully folks, if they're available, 10:30 a.m. at the church's burrito making. And then next monthly meeting, if we go by our typical second Sunday, it would be July 14th. I am out and unable to do any call-in from where I'm gonna be. So I was hoping to find, and I know it's tough for July and August in particular due to these types of things, but want to throw it out there, and maybe we have to do a quick doodle, especially seeing we've got 3 folks who are not on right now, just to make sure. But if there is a preference for sticking to a weekend, or if maybe we try to do a weeknight, maybe express that now so we kind of have some direction for a doodle poll. All right.
Let's put them all out there and see
Yeah.
what reaches consensus.
Taylor, would you be able to do a doodle poll on our behalf?
Yeah, do you have a specific sort of window that you're looking? Like, are we thinking of
Saying like
the-
the mid July, so we don't get lost in July, but also we want to be able to, that
Yeah.
first week anyway, no one's gonna probably want to raise their hand because of the holiday week. But
Yeah.
also because of our financials and stuff like that, we need to be able to have a little bit of lag time for reporting.
So how about
I'll-
10 to 24?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I'll put some dates, 10 to 24.
Sounds good.
Cool.
All right. If nothing else, I ask for Pastor Brett to write us closing prayer.
Lots going on. Thanks for working through that agenda. It was pretty, a lot of different things. So thank you. Thanks for the ongoing work. Yeah, you've all got busy lives and work and family stuff and different personal things going on. So let's be here for each other with them, including in the week. The Lord be with you.
Also with you.
That's great. God, thank you for these leaders, including Stephen, Christine, and Jim, who we're missing on travel. We pray that you lead us on, Lord, during this month through all the things that we've talked about and so much more in our own lives, in our faith lives, in our health, in our work, in our play. God, give us some play. Watch over us in transitions and big things. We pray for Alex and Joel, about to become parents, for safe and healthy delivery of baby, who we are so excited to meet. God, these are holy moments. We pray for our church, for new growth and for opportunity and for the real work that it comes with. Thank you for every hour and time given. Thank you for opportunities to enjoy all these events that we plan. So, Lord, watch over us in these weeks. Keep us safe. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I appreciate all of you. Thank you for taking the time today. Hopefully you can enjoy some of it before the committee sets back in. I will call this meeting to close at 1:24 p.m. Thanks all.